He wasn't lost, he was following instructions. We've been told for centuries that Columbus discovered America. But what if the truth is far more shocking? What if the maps he used, the very knowledge that guided his ships across the ocean, were stolen from Africa? The untold story of how black cartographers charted the course of history is next. For centuries, the narrative has been carefully constructed. A narrative of European discovery, of inherent European superiority, and frankly, a narrative that conveniently erases the contributions of others. We've been told stories of brave explorers venturing into the unknown, guided only by divine providence and sheer, unadulterated genius. But what if the truth was far more terrestrial? What if the maps they used, the very instruments that charted their course across the vast and unforgiving ocean, were not born of European ingenuity, but instead, bore the subtle, indelible imprint of African hands? Consider the tools of the trade. The astrolabe, the quadrant, the compass, instruments perfected over centuries, yes, but their origins are far more layered than the traditional accounts suggest. Knowledge doesn't exist in a vacuum. It travels, it evolves, it adapts. And nowhere was this more evident than in the sophisticated cartography practiced along the African coast for generations. Before the first European sails dared to venture south, African mariners were already masters of the Atlantic. They navigated by the stars, charted currents, and possessed intimate knowledge of trade winds that could propel ships across vast distances. In 1324, when Manso Musa, the ruler of Mali, made his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, his vast entourage spoke of journeys across the ocean, generations before Columbus even set sail. Now, let's talk about 1492. The year Christopher Columbus supposedly discovered America. The year forever etched in history books as the dawn of a new age of exploration. But ask yourself, how could he, a man with demonstrably limited navigational skills, navigate a route that even experienced sailors feared? The answer, my friends, is both simple and profoundly disruptive to the established narrative. He wasn't navigating in the dark. He wasn't relying solely on divine intervention. He was using a map. A map directly informed by African knowledge. Why it matters now? The past is not dead, it's not even past. It pulses beneath the surface, shaping the present in ways we often fail to grasp. Understanding this hidden history, reclaiming it, is not just about correcting textbooks. It's about understanding the roots of systemic inequities and fostering true equity. Consider the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. During World War II, the United States Air Force, riddled with prejudice, attempted to prove that black men lacked the intelligence and aptitude to fly combat missions. They believed black pilots were simply incapable. They went so far as to design a training program specifically intended to ensure failure. Obstacles were deliberately placed in their way, resources were withheld, and expectations were set impossibly high. This was 1941. The Tuskegee Airmen, against all odds, persevered. More than 1,000 pilots graduated from the program at the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama. And they did more than just graduate. They distinguished themselves in combat with unmatched skill and bravery. Flying escort missions for American bombers, the Tuskegee Airmen earned an astonishing record. They never lost a single bomber under their protection to enemy fire. Never. Their success shattered racist stereotypes and paved the way for the desegregation of the U.S. military in 1948, a watershed moment in American history. But here's what often goes unsaid: the Tuskegee Airmen had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. Their achievements were actively suppressed, their contributions minimized. Their heroism was an inconvenient truth for a nation grappling with its own ingrained prejudices. Now, imagine if the maps Columbus used had been acknowledged as African. What else has been hidden? What feats have been suppressed? What contributions systematically erased? What has been stolen? We all know the answers. Wait. What if the Air Force knew that the Tuskegee Airmen would succeed? What if the Air Force were trying to hide something bigger? What if the Air Force were trying to hide what the airmen were escorting? So, the next time you hear the name Christopher Columbus, remember the hidden hand that guided his ships. Remember the African mapmakers, navigators, and scholars whose knowledge was strategically erased from the narrative. Why does this matter today? Because knowing this truth reclaims our heritage. It reminds Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, of the intellectual power that was stolen, but never truly lost. It fuels a renewed sense of pride and inspires us to build a future where African innovation is celebrated, not suppressed. Want to dive deeper into uncovering these hidden histories and building your own African wealth story? Join our insider membership at pornoafric.com/membership.html for just $9 a month. You'll get exclusive content, early access to documentaries, and a community of like-minded individuals. Subscribe for more African wealth stories. Globe showing Europe Africa Money Bag.